Hey, this is Notser, and this week on Untitled, we're going to be discussing the 0.5.15 patch and what it means for later this year, November/December. I also want to touch on how the Japanese destroyer gameplay has been going. With the unreleased content, I have been playing a significant amount. I'm not going to talk about the stats, but I'm going to share my feelings. And what's wrong with sharing feelings, right? Finally, I would like to make sure that everyone in my audience that actually watches this is aware that EVGA is having an issue with the 1070 and the 1080 video cards. So, 0.5.15. It's on the public test server. What is on the public test server? Well, the German destroyers, at least graphically, exist in the game files. Now, you could do some tricky stuff to find out the stats for it, and there's plenty of references to it on the internet. I'm obviously not going to discuss that because they can follow me back. They probably watch my content right now. But what I will say is that the German destroyers, even though they're introduced in 0.5.15 on the public test server, they're probably, I'm 99% certain, they're probably not going to hit in 0.5.15. Much like the British cruisers, they will sit there in the game files for super testers to play, employees of Wargaming, maybe even press at some point, a day before it's launched. And let me just take a little moment. I really don't want another German Battleship / British cruiser where the content is released so close to press getting access to it that we basically have to drop everything in our lives to collect information and video content to have it edited, recorded, rendered out before these ships are actually launched. Otherwise, you get in a situation where other people are making content and you just can't keep up. So why even bother? I have yet to release a lot of British cruiser stuff because it's basically irrelevant now. I'm just going to work my way up and share great games and talk about those games, and maybe you'll be able to glean something from those games, but it's basically irrelevant from the standpoint of introducing the idea of the line, having enough knowledge to actually discuss it in detail. That is a big deal. I don't like being ignorant on a subject, and that's what I have been for the British cruisers and the German battleships. Not the case for the Japanese. The Japanese destroyer line, the updated version, is also on 0.5.15's public test server. What is it like? Well, for me personally, I only have access to the brand new ships. I don't have access to the altered statistical ships like the Shimakaze, or I believe what the Mutsuki is a tier 5 in the new version. But what I can say is that, boy, the alternative line has some interesting ships in it. There are some ships that play nothing like any Japanese ship I've ever seen before. And that's pretty good, honestly. There are some glaring weaknesses, and I can't discuss it in great detail, but what I will say is that if you know what I value in a ship, you will know what I dislike about some of the Japanese destroyers that are coming. So let's think about what Notser dislikes. I dislike the early tier American battleships. I dislike a lot of the Japanese destroyers that are fairly sluggish. So that's about as many clues as I'm going to give you. But what I do love is I love the Soviet destroyers. The Soviet destroyers are devastatingly effective. And there are some gems. There are some definite gems in the Japanese destroyers, unreleased Japanese destroyers. I still have to see how the Shimakaze plays. I've heard just horror stories of people, oh, it's over. They've ruined the damage that the guns do, but they fire like one extra round per minute, or one extra round than they usually do. That covers the damage difference. Oh no, it's over, completely wiped out. I don't really know. I need to actually try them out. I don't like So this is what I don't like. I don't like that the US destroyer line has better torpedo range than the Japanese, because the Japanese guns are not impressive enough to justify that. I feel completely competent, although granted, not in my stream on the gearing. It was a real bad day on my gearing. I ran into so many enemies that either had the perfect counter, radar, smoke. They knew exactly what was going on. It's almost like they were Jedi with the Force that could feel me coming around. The gearing doesn't give up a lot to have 16-kilometer range torpedoes. And I have good rearm cycle. It's not giving up a lot to the Shimakaze. Yeah, the Shimakaze, it's got 15 torpedoes, Notser. Yeah, so its gun systems are garbage in comparison to the other ones. It gets wiped out if it's seen by a Benson, a Tashkent, Udoloy, Fletcher, Geary, Hobodovsk. These ships will devastate a Shimakaze. And that's not really fair. Even a good player doesn't have a good solution. And I don't know that there's going to be a good solution in the Japanese destroyer line. I still feel like they err on the side of the torpedo systems being effective, at least the main line. Anyone who doesn't know, the main line is the equivalent of what we have right now. Pretty good torpedo systems, okay gun systems. They don't have as much range as you would like. They definitely have the least amount of range of any other gun system. But their velocity is really, really high. The Soviet destroyers have great velocity, and of course they have great range, so they can really be devastating at long range. The Japanese aren't really like that, and they are not morphing into anything other than what they are. Maybe just slightly easier to control, but not by much. They're definitely not becoming a hybrid. The Americans are the hybrids. We know they're the hybrids. They basically are hybrid at the Benson, the Fletcher, and the gearing. That's obviously what a hybrid is, where the gun systems feel competent, great concealment if you so choose. You can counter the enemy destroyers effectively. You can counter any battleships. You can counter any cruisers. You have the ability to put on defensive fire. Smoke, that's a hybrid. The Japanese are not hybrids. They are still torpedo-bound, mostly. And I think they're coming in 0.5.15. This was just added to the public test server, the public test server tech trees. They just added that. I think it's absolutely going in. I think 0.5.15, I think it's ready, or as ready as it's going to be. I'm not seeing enough changes to really justify the whole process, but that's a different story entirely. The gun system Japanese are sufficiently different that they stand out. They definitely stand out from the crowd. You will not, now visually you might mix them up, but once you've seen how they're loaded down with modules, consumables, their artillery, their torpedo systems, you will recognize immediately what this Japanese destroyer is focused at. And I can't really tell you until you get to really see it, until you've had your chance. I can't wait to try it. I will, you know me and destroyers. I will eat up all this content. I am ready to go with the Japanese. I've got a really good game in the tier 8 and the gun system. I really apologize. I don't know the names. All I know is the tier 8 in the alternative line. I have a fantastic game in it. Absolutely amazing game. That will be shared at some point when I can. I'm still working on the tier 7. The tier 9 in the main line. It doesn't feel any different. I don't know what I'm looking for. And then, of course, you have the Shimakaze, you have the tier 6 Fubuki, the Hataharu, the tier 6 on the alternative line. We gotta discuss all this, right? Kagero, who's the tier 8, I believe. Yeah, there's plenty of ships that I will have to talk about and research after the fact. And there will probably be a dedicated stream to this stuff. More than likely, you will see me playing a lot of Japanese destroyers whenever the patch comes out. Now, when is the patch coming out, and what else is with the 0.5.15? Well, there's going to be campaigns, and basically a campaign is a set of missions, a set of tasks that you have to accomplish in order to earn some significant reward. It sounds like a mission, Notser. Yes, it is, but I think what they're going for is you can decide between multiple missions. This is sort of a natural progression of the mission systems that exist in World of Tanks. Anyone who is familiar, World of Tanks, you can work towards unlocking, I think, what, 4 tanks. Yeah, 4 tanks of varying tiers, varying styles, and it requires you to do a lot of effort, honestly. A lot of effort, play multiple classes. There's not as much effort in World of Warships. It's a little bit more skill-based, I would say, in Warships overall, because it's requiring stuff like, you know, get this amount of damage. In World of Tanks, you've got things like cause 3 fires on the same target. The equivalent would probably be cause 10 fires on a target in World of Warships. It would get really annoying really, really quickly if they did something similar. I'm glad that they have avoided all the annoying aspects of World of Tanks so far with the UI and the port slash what is it? Is it a hangar or a garage? Well, I don't remember what tanks are called. Factory, maybe. So the campaign map, well, it's just some abstract map. You select tasks, you do the task. Once you've accomplished the task, you move on to it unlocks the ability to try to do a more difficult task. And the reward right now, the really long campaign, is the Mikasa. No joke, it's the Mikasa. Like, I want that piece of garbage. It's probably the worst premium in the game, at least feeling. It probably isn't the worst premium, but it just feels so worthless because you only have 4 guns and they are so inaccurate. You just can't rely on your guns hitting the target. So it feels like you should just autopilot the ship and you'll get more success. But it's the first one. Maybe it's just an example. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? The Missouri is on the radar. They have released more information on it, more pictures. I have heard from my contact that he very much is interested in allowing the North American community contributors to have access to it at some point. He usually doesn't bring this up unless it's fairly close, within a month. Which I think is fair, obviously, but that's not a shocker. I mean, usually good PR brings up something that's relevant within a given month or a given quarter, so they can keep all the marketing together and they can see real figures from the interest level. It doesn't make any sense to talk about the Missouri and then not have it come out for 3 months. I will, of course, make a video on it. I don't expect it to be just a crazy departure from the Iowa. I expect it to be just a different skin, and that's completely fine. So, we've talked about 0.5.15. I've discussed that the German destroyers, even though they're in the patch, doesn't mean they're coming, and in fact, it probably means they're not coming because it's the first patch that they've been a part of. It's just too soon. The super testers, the press, wargaming employees have not been able to play it on the live server and seen how it impacts the game. So we're going to have to push that off. 5.16, 5.17 at least for the German destroyers. The Japanese, however, have been added to the tech tree. And they have been available in the game files since 0.5.13. And we're on 0.5.14. Most of the community contributors have access to this content. So we're fairly close. I think 0.5.15 is the safe bet for the Japanese, and that's great. This week we have Thanksgiving in North America, or at least United States. Thanksgiving in Canada was October 20th, 25th. It was around a week before Halloween or something like that. So anyone who watches Americans, you might find that, Thursday they're not going to be doing anything. Thankfully, I don't have a stream on Thursday, so it's not going to impact me one bit. You're still going to get a video. You're still going to get a video on Thursday and Friday. Doesn't change a thing for me. But what it basically confirms is there's not going to be a lot of progress on a patch or anything close to Thanksgiving. I would assume they don't want to release that close to a major holiday for one of their major regions. It's sort of like why the Russians will avoid early January, I think, right? They don't want to touch January. Late December, it's just not a good time for developers to release this stuff. There's too many people around the world that are participating in holidays. And that's just the truth. That's just the way it works out. So, EVGA. What the hell is going on with EVGA, Notser? Why did you bring up the 1070 and the 1080? Well, it's a pretty big deal. About 3 months ago, I purchased a gaming PC, and I turned my gaming PC at the time into my streaming and rendering PC. I'm actually recording this on that streaming and rendering PC, but my gaming PC is beefy. It's got a 1080. And it's an EVGA 1080 because EVGA is a great company. They do a great job, Notser. You should buy EVGA. Okay, I'll buy EVGA. Well, for myself and anyone else who has a EVGA video card, 1070 or 1080 variant, there's a bunch. There's probably like 6 or 7 of each. They're burning out their video RAM because they didn't put enough shroud protection, enough thermal connections between the memory and the actual heatsink that just is covering these graphics cards. It's ridiculous. I like to go back to the Voodoo days. Anyone remember Voodoo? Boy, those were awesome cards. But graphics cards are ridiculous. They are massive now. They're bigger than like some PC cases. They're just huge. They're just huge. So obviously there's a lot of heat there, and they need to get rid of that heat. They didn't do a good enough job on the 1070 and the 1080. They just overheat too much. And some of them catch on fire. There was a streamer, he had his PC facing the camera, and you can see this ember just growing and growing and growing. And then finally, whoosh, a huge explosion. His main gaming PC goes off. He's obviously got the same sort of setup with a streaming PC and a gaming PC. And it was a huge catastrophic failure. The card gone. And it's a big deal. So please protect yourself. Go to EVGA.com if you have a 1070 or a 1080 and check that you are under this warranty package. There is great solutions. Well, great. The best solution is for it to never happen, but these things happen. We can't change that anymore. They won't give you a BIOS update, and the BIOS update is basically just going to have a more aggressive fan speed control, so it runs more often. It's going to be louder, unfortunately, but it should keep the card a little bit cooler. Since it's memory, though, it's not being tracked via temperature. The only way you would know if your memory is close to failure is if you get one of those heat guns and you point it at the memory itself. There's no sensor near the memory. Another solution is they will send out thermal pads. As long as you prove that you made the purchase and it is indeed your card, they will send it out. You will have to modify your card and put it all in. That's not a big deal for some people. It's a huge deal for a lot of people, though. And they offer a third solution that they don't really talk about because they don't want too many people knowing about it. If you contact customer support and you say to them, these solutions are not appropriate, I want to get like an RMA, they will send you a card. They will put a charge on your credit card just to protect themselves, but they will send the card before you send your card back for repair, and you can not blink an eye. You can have your graphics card or an equivalent the entire time you're dealing with this issue. So just try If you are one of these people who brought an EVGA, a 1070 or a 1080 before November 15th or something like that, protect yourself. Don't allow it to explode. It's catastrophic. The PC's just going to be gone. EVGA will have to cover it. I believe they do, as long as you can prove that you didn't do anything crazy, like dropping it 100 stories or something stupid like that. They should be willing to cover any issues that arise from failure of this video RAM. But do you really want that to happen? No, I don't want that to happen. I can't afford to not have a PC for this stuff. It's my life. So I just want to bring that up because I'm on the NVIDIA forums, I'm on the NVIDIA subreddit, and I still see constantly, oh man, my graphics card was just fine and then it was gone. Oh, did you hear about EVGA? What? There was something wrong? EVGA is acting like this isn't a big deal. It's a very big deal. And you need to take care of it if you are one of those who are affected. I hope this Untitled was helpful. Boy, I wanted to hit that Omaha so bad, or that Phoenix. He was so lucky. The shells dispersed. Ineffective against the ship. And we showed way too much side to the battleship. But at that point, it was like, there's nothing I could do. He was able to get around. I was distracted. I allowed him to get around. It is my fault. The game was fantastic either way. I hope you enjoyed seeing the Nikolai in this environment. I don't really play it that often. There's a lot of ships I don't play it that often because people, the tier 10s, they're the sexy ones on the stream, of course. But, it's whatever. I'm very excited for the next few months with a lot of Destroyer content coming out. It's a dream come true. It really is. I can't wait to share with you some Japanese Destroyer games that I have collected. Those will be exciting to see, don't you worry. I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.